Hello and welcome to Devil's Advocate. As 2012 gets underway, how do India's top businessmen view the government and its handling of the economy? That's the key issue I shall discuss today with the chairman of the Housing Development Finance Corporation, Deepak Parekh. Mr. Parekh, let's start with the year that's just ended. Many people say that 2011 was one of the worst years faced by any government for a long time. Others say that the country's ended up depressed. Some even say disillusioned. Would you agree with both of those?
I would agree with those. 2011 is a year to forget about, not only for India but for the whole world. You see what happened in Europe, in US, everywhere. So 2011 has been a bad year, and so also for India. So we should now, in the new year, think positively and look at options and opportunities.
Now, in the open letter that you wrote on the 17th of January, you spoke of the collapse in the self-confidence and self-belief of Indians in themselves and in the state. 12 months later, has that collapse of self-confidence got worse?
It is at a low end. But how does this negativism and, the more you criticize the government, the more negative you are about the government, the confidence around you, the confidence amongst the people of the country also takes a dip.
So it becomes a self-fulfilling vicious spiral.
Absolutely. And I think we have to look at it differently today, and we have to be more positive. It's a new year. Let the past be behind us, and let's look at what we can do, how we can get back to 8% GDP growth.
Okay, I'll come to that in a moment's time. But for the government, after a succession of scandals and scams, after the CVC imbroglio, after the crisis with Anna Hazare and Baba Ramdev, and then right at the end of the year, the debacle over FDI in retail and the debacle over the Lokpal, would you accept that the government's authority and credibility have also been damaged?
It has been damaged, but part of it, the way the politics works in our country. First of all, we have a coalition government, and partners with minor seats, less number of seats, can dictate policies rather than the party with the largest number of seats.
It's a bit like the tail wagging the dog.
It is the tail wagging the dog. Then the opposition has also not played a positive role. Now, the role of an opposition party anywhere in the world is to oppose. But in a democracy, dissent is acceptable. Disagreement is part of democracy, but not distortion, not breaking up the parliament every day. Disruption in politics is not good. And what we saw in parliament this session and the earlier sessions this year needs a lot to be desired. It gives you a little negative feeling on democracy. What are we doing? Is it a victory of democracy, or democracy is becoming a big curse for us? No decisions can be taken if every item, if every policy issue which the ruling party puts up and the opposition opposes, and opposes by disrupting parliament, by dislodging parliament. So I think we need to have a better system. Everyone has a day in the sun. The opposition will get their day in the sun. But I think the opposition party also must behave more responsibly. The coalition partners in a coalition government must also behave more rationally.
If I understand you correctly, you're suggesting not just the behavior of the government, but the response of the opposition has thrown into question the functioning and efficiency of India's democracy.
Yes. Unable to take decisions. This is because the political system, the democracy, the way it is working with so many parties, and so many coalition partners, it becomes very difficult.
So this has raised serious, if not damaging, questions about the very system of governance in India.
Absolutely. I think the people of India will realize that in general elections, you must have one party running the country and not 10 different parties joining hands. It doesn't work. It doesn't help. It doesn't do good for progress.
So it's not just a government crisis, it's not just a political crisis, it's a system crisis.
Yeah, it's a system crisis.
Which means it's much worse.
It is bad because, you can't take decisions. Then how can the country progress?
Now, one key issue which was there in both the open letters you wrote last year, was what you called the widespread governance deficit. One of your colleagues, Azim Premji, said the biggest concerns now are government issues and the complete absence of decision-making in the government. Explain to me, What does this mean for industrialists, for investment and the economy?
See, when we talk of governance deficit, we are talking at two levels. One is the petty corruption, which you and I and everyone in India faces, and one is the corruption at the senior level, large amounts like the Commonwealth Games or the telecom scandal or, Adarsh building in Bombay. These are bigger issues. Now, if you look at the small man, the common man in the country is fed up because he can't get anything done without paying a bribe. For instance, you want a driving license, you want a death certificate. I had to pay for a death certificate. You don't get death certificates.
You yourself?
I had to pay. Birth certificate, passports, driving license. Now the main reason for this corruption at low level, and this is 100, 500,000 bucks, small amounts, is that the salary levels of people are abysmally low. How do you expect a policeman on the street to keep law and order, to protect the citizens when he lives in slums or slum-like conditions? He doesn't have enough money to feed his children.
People in authority, even if they're only policemen, have to be paid enough to guarantee that they don't have to resort to corruption.
Yes, absolutely.
Once again, we have to think through very carefully, right down to the very bottom, how we pay and how we run the system.
Absolutely.
It's a root and branch.
So what we said in that is we need some redressal mechanism for the common man. And particularly we need police reforms, judicial reforms, electoral reform.
But you also wrote about what you called policy paralysis. The fact that the government talks about critical reforms but is unable to deliver them. In that context, how damaging was the debacle over FDI in retail, where the Prime Minister endorsed the policy, but Sonia Gandhi was silent, the allies opposed, and the government couldn't go ahead?
It was a bad day for Indian democracy. I think it was a sad day for Indian business. I think FDI and retail will help the farming community. We need to invest in farming. We need much more R&D and technology, and we need to upgrade our farmers. And whether you like it or not, FDI and retail will do that to some extent.
Given that FDI and retail is so critical to India's future in so many ways, when the government proposes it and then within 10 days has to back down, how much of a hit did the government's image and credibility take?
Government's image has been tarnished, has been hit, but I must say that the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister have confidently said we will bring back FDI retail on the radar and it will be through by June 2012.
That's true.
They both emphatically said that. And I believe in that, and I'm sure they will try and do that.
That's absolutely true. But when you and your fellow business colleagues met the Prime Minister on the 22nd of December, he pointedly bristled at some of the critical comments you'd made. In fact, after that meeting, the Prime Minister's office issued a formal statement which said, "It is a little disappointing to hear negative comments emanating from our business leadership or to be told that the government's policies are causing slowdown and pessimism in the industrial sector." How do you respond to that?
Well, you know what I started in the beginning, that if the Prime Minister's point, and he had a point, he said that if all of you are negative and all of you have negativism and you are totally pessimist about growth, about future, then what will happen to the country?
Except that so many people share that criticism.
And that is true, but the point is it's an accumulation of things that has happened over the year.
But was he being defensive rather than being open and admitting that the government has let down people or disappointed people? Was he being defensive?
I think this meeting took place at the end of December, and as we said, let's forget the past, let's see what we can do next year.
Except that he went a little further. He said that comments like yours were creating uncertainty. He said that you were emboldening those who have no stake in India's economic future.
No, we have stake in India's economic future. All of us who are present had stake, and all of us present are concerned, and this is the right time for India to outshine the others.
But
we did not take that advantage.
Except that he seems to have taken your advice slightly in the wrong spirit.
Well, no one likes criticism. No politician likes criticism. You and I don't like criticism of ourselves. So I guess it was a defensive statement. I guess it was a statement which probably was prepared by his press guys, and It
was a bit of an error to be defensive, wasn't it?
I agree.
Your colleague Harsh Mariwala, the president of FICCI, said shortly afterwards, there is a problem of trust between the government and the corporate sector.
If you ask me, in the year 2011, government and industrialists have, instead of coming closer, have become further apart. That trust, that closeness, that association that one must have to succeed in a country is diminished for a variety of reasons. And you know, you can't, if you ask me, give me one reason, I can't. There are a number of reasons.
But the fact is, it has diminished.
It has diminished. And industry and governments have gone apart rather than coming closer.
Whose responsibility is it to be the first to reach out?
No, I think it's both parties have to reach out. The industrialists also have to reach out. And industrialists reach out to the government when they are in difficulty.
But the government then perceives that as criticism and becomes defensive.
No, in the sense, if particular industry is not working well, if massive losses are there in any industry, then the industrialists come crying to the government for help. So, you know, when the need is there, they come running. And so, you know, both of them have to be blamed and both have to work closer.
Harsh Mariwala has also said that business confidence today is lower than it was in 2008. And that was when Lehman Brothers and the recession hit us.
No, he's right. He's right. Today, if you look around, what is fresh investments are not happening. We need massive investments in India, both from the public sector and private sector, and neither are investing. When you tell me that every public sector company is sitting with massive funds, resources on hand, that means they're not investing. We need investments in India for growth.
They've lost confidence in India, that's why they're not investing.
I don't know whether they've lost confidence. They feel the risk of investment because the approvals take a long time, and if a project is always risky, they may put some large amount of money in a project. If it doesn't take off, then they will be blamed. Why did you spend so much money?
Maybe they haven't lost confidence, but the risk of investing in their eyes has gone up.
The risk and the negative accusations, if the project fails or if the project doesn't take off and they lose a lot of money, that they will be pointed at and said, why did you do this?
This is why
and they blame them.
This is why 2012 has begun on a gloomy note.
Yeah. But now we have to see what we can do.
Let's take a break and come back and address that precise point. I'm going to ask you after the break, what is it that the government can and should do, and what if it doesn't? That's in a moment's time. See you after the break. Welcome back to Devil's Advocate and an interview with the chairman of HDFC, Deepak Parekh. Mr. Parekh, after your meeting with the Prime Minister at the end of December, you said, we have discussed what needs to be done to change the mood of the country. What are the top 3 things you want the government to do?
I would say you need more than 3 things. But first is investment. We need investments. Investments, when I mean in new industries, in infrastructure, in roads, in airports, in ports, power, we need investments.
And the government must facilitate these.
Yeah. Investments both by private sector and public sector.
And here the budget has to facilitate them.
Well, the budget has to facilitate the implementation process. The approval process has to be streamlined much more than what it is today. You see, industrialists are today telling me that why we can't put up a project in India. We don't know what the project cost will be. We don't know when it will complete and start production because of all the uncertainties that are there of different approvals.
So remove the uncertainties.
Remove the uncertainties. Give us a timetable that by which we can get our approvals and permissions, whether it is coal or environment or water. Let it not drag on and on and on forever.
Okay, that's one clear thing. What are the others?
So one is in fresh investments is needed. Secondly, interest rates have to come down gradually. Food inflation has come down extremely low. Interest rates have to come down to spur growth, to spur economic.
In other words, you'd like Pranab Mukherjee to have a word in the ear of the RBI governor and speed it up.
In other words, as the governor has said repeatedly, if inflation comes down, we will look at interest rates. And he's repeated that last week.
Now he must deliver.
Now he will. I'm sure he will. So that's another. The third thing is approval process has to be streamlined for all infrastructure and non-infrastructure. The fourth is there are dozens of projects which are stuck halfway, particularly in power sector. These power projects have to kick-start again. And we have suggested when we met the Prime Minister that why don't you have someone in the PM's office look at 10 marquee projects and let them analyze what are the decisions necessary and let's push them.
So in other words, appoint a special person who will be responsible for analyzing and pushing.
Analyzing and giving the Prime Minister and his senior colleagues a decision that these decisions are necessary.
How important in your eyes is the need to push through critical reforms which the government has spoken about but which are stalled either in Parliament or caught up in party politics? DTC, GST, pension, banking, insurance, all of them.
All these are very critical. It's very critical, not maybe for me, but for my kids. If they start putting these acts in place, then it will help in the future. The other thing is government must reduce their expenditure. The other thing is we have large number of social projects. Social development projects, rural programs, we must push them because we must 60% of our population, 600 million or so, live in rural India. How do we make them put more money in their pockets so they do more consumption?
You know, you've given me a long list of things which also translates into a large number of areas where the government has been deficient or ineffective. Let me ask you a simple question. Can we hope to return to 8% growth, leave aside 10, if these areas of concern are not tackled and if the policy paralysis continues?
I don't think we will get to 8%. We will have to be satisfied with 7%. Don't forget, this year, the monsoons have been good for the last 2 years. We've had agricultural growth of 3, 4, 4.5%, which ensures that we will get at least to 7%.
That won't happen next year necessarily.
May not happen because we have to depend on the rain god.
So if policy paralysis continues and the agricultural growth doesn't happen, you could slip below 7.
Yes, you could slip below 7.
One other thing, if the policy paralysis continues, do you think Indian industries will either continue to sit on their money and not invest or look for opportunities abroad? Will that trend get worse?
Well, that trend can accelerate. More and more Indians are looking at investing abroad. But the market is in India. Everyone knows that the desire of Indian businessmen is first to invest here. It's a huge market, huge population, large middle class, urbanization happening. All factors are positive. Only if we can get our act together.
And that really means if the government can get its act together first. Now, for the next 2 months at least, UP elections, Punjab, Uttarakhand elections are going to dominate politics. And you know, when elections are in the offing, politicians become populist. So are you also saying to me that we can't expect anything substantial until UP, Uttarakhand and Punjab are over and done with?
But this 1 month. Most elections are over by end of February. We are in January.
So the budget is your big hope.
So budget is the big hope.
Let me ask you a simple, perhaps blunt question. Are you disappointed with the Prime Minister?
I wouldn't say I'm disappointed with the Prime Minister, but Prime Minister has to take a much more broader, quicker decision-making effort, and he has to, push reforms. I know he's under various compulsions. He tells us that, today the secretaries, the ministers are not able to take decisions. People are scared to take decisions. Now, if every paper or every decision is pushed up to the Prime Minister, what can the poor Prime Minister do? We have created a fear psychosis in the minds of ministers and secretaries because of 1 or 2 major scandals.
But you're also saying to me, aren't you, that you expected more of Dr. Manmohan Singh?
We need Manmohan Singh. He is the best Prime Minister. He is the cleanest Prime Minister. He's been a blessing for India.
But he needs to do more.
He wants to do more, and I'm convinced he will do more.
He may want to do more.
His hands are tied because his coalition partners don't support him. His hands are tied because the opposition don't support him.
Are his hands also tied by Sonia Gandhi?
Well, I don't know about that. That you people in Delhi know more about it than we.
How do you view Rahul Gandhi?
Hope, good hope for the youngster. He's hardworking, he's sincere, he's trying his very best, he's young, He has the right family name, and who knows? He may become. He may be a future prime minister at some stage.
Are you really hopeful today in 2012 as the year begins that Dr. Manmohan Singh will live up either to your expectations or to the promises he's made to you?
I'm confident he will. You will see a different set of guidelines and difference in speed at which decisions are taken after February. You will see that. I'm very hopeful, I'm very optimistic that Prime Minister and his team have taken a view, have taken a decision. We will not let 2011 continue.
Mr. Parekh, a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.